a video. Yeah. So, with any luck, we're recording a video now of Maya, and from here on out, this stuff should show up on the video that I'm going to submit for you later. So, first things first, I'm going to go ahead and get my bridge open. So I'm going to go to File, and then I'm going to set my project. Okay. Again, this is how I always open a Maya project. I'm sure some of you did it differently over the last couple of days. This is a habit you need to get into. So first things first, set my project. And I'm going to set that project to my desktop. Mine is right there, my bridge folder. So yours may be on your hard drive. Yours may be somewhere else. I'm going to set it to the bridge folder. And the reason I do that, and I only have to do it once, but the reason I do that is now if I go to File, Open Scene, Maya knows exactly where I'm working, right? Maya understands that this is where all my files are. It understands that this is where my textures are. All of that stuff Maya can associate with that now. Otherwise, it doesn't know where all that stuff is, and you're asking it to like be a magician and know stuff it can't know, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open up, I think it's this one. No, it's not, but we'll use it anyway.
Can we just open our final bridge?
Yep. So the file that you've been working on over the last couple of days, just go ahead and open that up. Okay. So you probably should have something similar to this. Let me double check and make sure mine's cleaned out here. All that stuff. All right. So, a couple of issues that people have been having, and I've sent out an email about this, or I posted on Band about this, or replied to somebody's post on Band about this. But some of you have been having that issue where you hold down Alt and middle click, and instead of doing the pan, it pops up that application switcher. Anybody having that issue? Okay, let me show you how to fix that. I may have already shown a few of you, but if we go down here and just type mouse, right, and I'm going to just go to my mouse settings here. You'll see that in my mouse settings, you should have this Setpoint Settings tab. So if we click that, it's going to open up a whole new set of options here, right? So the problem is with number 3, 6, and 7. Those are all button assignments for your middle mouse wheel, right? For that mouse wheel. And so 3, application switcher, is if you push the button down, if you click down on it, right? And so 6 and 7 is if you accidentally wobble it to the left or right while you have it pushed down, right? So really that mouse button has 3 different, or that mouse wheel has 3 different buttons other than scroll, right? We just need to change all of those to middle click. Okay, so if I have 3 application switcher selected there, if I go over here and change that to middle button, that fixes that. Left scroll, you'll see I don't see middle button, but there's an other. I can click on that and change that to middle button. Right scroll, other, middle button. Okay, and so if I hit apply, okay, now when I hold Alt and middle click, I should be able to do what I want to do, okay? So does everybody have their bridge open? Yeah. So let's just take like 2 or 3 minutes to hop up and walk around and look at everybody's bridge, okay? So there's a couple, yes?
Mine's still not doing it. How do I turn off the application and it's still not scroll?
Scroll? All right. But anyway, while we're working on that, let's just hop up and walk around. Everybody's going to have something pretty similar, right? But just look at everybody's bridge and see if it looks like a bridge. Right? That's really the...
Oh my God, your guys' bridges are great too.
Yep.
Did you start this from scratch? Did you change anything? The only reason this is great is that
Let's start calling that a great
That's yeah, I don't know. Well, you say you have a Mac?
Yeah.
Max are dumb.
Hey, Marla,
Yes.
I say we should call all moments that make a boring day good a great bridge moment.
A great bridge moment.
I mean, it's like a platinum bridge.
It is. It's nice.
Oh my god.
Okay, so everybody should have some variation of a bridge, right? Now, if yours is a little different, I saw a couple of people who were very precise chatting on band, and that's cool. Like some of you were like, mine has too many of these little braces on one side and not on the other. What's going on, right? So a couple of the things that you may have noticed is that in the example I gave you, the support, these beams that support it, were not directly in the center, and that was offset a little bit. That's okay. I'm not counting off for that. In fact, as long as you have a bridge file up in the folder, then you get full credit for this assignment. Okay, it's a check or an X, a 1 or a 0. Okay, let me show you where that folder is in case you haven't put it up there yet. Okay, so again, that ETSU E3, remember / ETSU E3, right? Faculty, Greg, POA, Dropbox, bridge construction. So that's exercise 1, bridge construction. Right? And you'll see that most people have put a folder in there. This was from Friday. I told a lot of people. So you'll put a folder in there with your file or with your name on it, right? So just create a new folder. And then underneath that, you'll see that you can either put just the .mb file or let's see if I find somebody to put the whole folder. Or you can put the entire bridge folder in there, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in with Maya. I'm going to open every one of them up. And if I see something that looks remotely like a bridge, congratulations. Okay. So, the reason for that is because this was an exercise. If you were able to put something together, then that means you figured out navigation, right? How do we tumble in Maya? How do we tumble our camera?
Alt, right, left click.
Alt left click, right? Is that right? Yeah. Alt left
That's
click.
what I had to do.
How do we pan in Maya? We just talked about this one.
Alt middle click.
Alt middle click, right? Yeah, the little scroll wheel. You got to push that down until it clicks. And then when we hold Alt right click, what are we doing?
We're moving the camera in and out.
Right. So we're not zooming. That's actually called dollying. Right? We're pushing our camera closer to the object or pulling our camera further away. Right? How do I move an object in Maya? What's the shortcut key? W. Right? So W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. Right? What happens if I hit Q? It's the select tool, right? So you can still select things, you just can't manipulate it, right? So Q, W, E, R, select, move, rotate, scale, right? So it sounds like you were all able to master those tools, and I know this feels like I'm starting you off slow, right? But let's go back to that movie we just watched, right? Let's talk about that. Like, this bridge we're looking at right now is made up of a bunch of boxes, right? Let's say I don't want to make a movie just about boxes. Let's say I want to make a movie about aliens, and I want to make a movie about spaceships and aluminum cans and a delivery service, right? There were boxes in that. He was delivering a box, right? But there's also a spaceship, and I don't have a create spaceship button along the top of my screen up here, right? There's no spaceship button. All right, so how do I turn a bunch of boxes into a spaceship? I turned a bunch of boxes into a bridge. How do I turn those primitive objects into a spaceship? Gotta manipulate them. Bend them to your will, right? So that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk about how to make more complex objects, right? That process is called modeling. And actually, what you've done here is some very simple modeling. You modeled a bridge, right? Earlier, you just had some boxes. Now you have a bridge, right? But some things can't just be made up out of primitive objects. We have to manipulate those primitive objects into something more complex. So I'm just going to sort of move off to the side. Oh, and well, first I'm going to create an object, and then I'm going to move it off to the side. So I'm going to create a sphere. Okay, and you'll see that if I just click that sphere button, it made it underneath there. And I'm just going to move it over so I can do some different things to it. Okay. So we've already seen that we can change this sphere. We can move it. We can rotate it. And to change the form of this more, in a bigger way, we can actually scale it too. So I can turn my sphere into a disc or something like that, right? Or I can turn it into some sort of blade or something like that. But past that, I really can't manipulate this too much, just with those translates, rotates, and scale tools. I need to be able to go in there and do stuff to the form of it, right? So let's say what I wanted was to turn my sphere into an alien's head, right? And the alien has antenna coming up out of the top of its head. There are let me not start that way. Whatever I want to do to this, though, I can't just do with this sphere. I can't scale it to get antenna coming out of the top of its head. I can't scale it to turn it into a figure 8 shape, right? And so all of those manipulations are on the object level. I'm manipulating the object. I'm moving it, I'm rotating it, I'm scaling the object. But you'll notice that this object has a bunch of these like crisscrosses on it, like little boxes drawn on it, right? These lines. Right? Anybody know what those are called?
Faces.
Both of you are right. There's actually another one too. It's a vertex. Right? So all of these this is a polygon model. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about what a polygon is here in a minute. But you've probably heard that word before. Right? So if I right click on this object, so I'm just going to go over here and hold down my right click button, you'll see that I get this menu that pops up. This is called a marking menu. And the reason it's called a marking menu is because I can sort of drag to navigate through these menus, right? So I'm going to sort of unselect everything here and try it again. So right click, and you'll see that in this marking menu I have the options for vertex, edge, object, and face, right? So we're currently in object mode, right? We're manipulating the entire object, but let's just go to vertex. Let's just drag over, choose vertex, right? So you'll see that the object changed a little bit. Right, now we have all these little blue dots all over it. Let's just select one and move it. See what happens to it.
I created a monstrosity.
All right, so I grab that and I move it, and so now I can start manipulating individual parts of this. Okay. That thing we're manipulating is a vertex. Strangely, the plural of vertex, if you have more than one, is vertices, right? And that's, you'll get used to that. But really, it's just a point in space, right? So a point has no length, width, or depth. It's just a point, right? And we're able to manipulate that around. Now, let's say I have 2 points. How do I connect 2 points? Like just well, no, this is a more like theoretical question. Like I drew a point on the whiteboard. I drew another point on the whiteboard. What's the easiest way to connect those? A line, right? Now, the easiest way, the simplest way to connect that is a perfectly straight line, right? Because I could zigzag that line everywhere and eventually get those 2 dots connected. But a perfectly straight line is the simplest way to connect any 2 points. Okay? So just like that, in modeling, the simplest way to connect any 2 vertices is an edge. So I'm going to right click again and go to edge. And you'll see that I can grab an edge and I can manipulate it too. Right? Now, an edge does have length, right? Which means I can scale it too. I can also rotate it. Okay? So I can scale that edge if I wanted to and make it really big. right? I can also rotate it and twist it around, right? And so now I'm starting to get some very different looking things on this model, right? Just by manipulating a vertex and an edge. Okay, so again, back to theoretical mode here. The next thing that we can edit in a sub-object, the next sub-object we can edit in a polygon model is a face. Okay, so let's just go ahead and look at one of those. So, going to right-click, go to face, and you'll see that as I mouse over, it's grabbing those squares, right? So let's talk about what a face is. A face is does not necessarily have to be square, right? A face can be a triangle. A face can be any level of quadrangle, right? Like we can have a 1,000-sided face, right? What is the smallest possible enclosed area of edges we could have? 3, right? Somebody held up their hand back there in the back, so I wasn't just giving you the answer. So think about that. If you just have 2 edges, that's not enclosed, right? You have to have 3 to make up a triangle. And so the way the computer is going to generate a model, the way it's going to think about a 3D object is with those 3 things, right? Because if you think of that, that's not a lot of things to calculate. We have to have 3 points in space, 3 points in XYZ space, right? And, I'm sorry. We have to have 3 points in XYZ space to be able to generate a face, right? And with that, we can tumble around and see it from all sides. And so that's the simplest form of a polygon model. Now, why is all of this made up of squares instead of triangles? Yeah.
Squares are better to manipulate and it makes it easier for rendering and
So, kind of, yeah. So, it's not necessarily that they're just easy to manipulate as much as it's easier to see, right? Because if this was all cut up into triangles, right, I wouldn't be able to see any consistent flow in these edges. Right? So right now you can see that I have this edge right here, right, and it flows into this edge and it goes all the way around that model, right? We call that an edge loop, okay? But really, every one of these squares, and we call these quads, right, because it's a 4-sided face, right? If we cut that in 2, if we drew a line in between, across that diagonally, right, then we would just have 2 triangles again, right? And that's actually how Maya is thinking about that thing. Later we'll get into more complex modeling, but the thing you need to realize is that for most of your modeling, just for clarity reasons, just because it's easier to understand and easier to manipulate, you want most of your faces to be squares. You want them to be quads, right? 4-sided faces. Triangles are okay too. Anything above 4, though, is generally bad. And we'll talk about that later. For now, don't worry about that. But in the future, that's one of the things you'll be working on once you're modeling some stuff. And you'll have a face that has like 30 sides. Maya has a harder time rendering that in a clear way, right? So we'll want to clean those up. But for right now, it's not as big of a deal. Right now, though, just recognize that that's what this is being made up of. All of these are called sub-objects, and we can manipulate those, right? Okay, I can grab this face. I can move it out. Right? I can scale it. And so with this, you're starting to see that I can turn that sphere into something way more complex. Right? I did want to show you this on edges. This is nice. Is if I go down here on edges, right click, I'm going to go to edge. And I click on that edge, I have that edge selected, right? But if I double click on that edge, it's going to select that entire edge loop. Right? And so that's another reason that we want to keep this in quads, is because it's easier to select that entire flow of edges. And now I have that entire flow of edges selected. I can also scale that in and out. Right? So I can make some big changes to this model quickly. Right? So, these are kind of the basics of manipulating these sub-objects. because that's not all we're going to do. We can also take multiple objects and weld vertices together. I can generate additional mesh from a face. It's called extruding. And we're going to just play around with some of this and learn some basic modeling stuff. And by doing that, we're just going to model us a car for our bridge. A very simple car. You're welcome to take this as far as you want to, but in class today, we're going to model a car, we're going to texture it, or I'm not going to texture it, we're going to put materials on it, and then we're going to render it. I'm sorry, then we're going to animate it, not render it yet, sorry. So we're going to make it move, okay? So, I'm just going to go ahead and delete my monstrosity here. Go back to object mode so I can select it. Hit delete, okay? Well, currently, my, let me get rid of these here so I can just show you this. Sorry, I needed to clean up this file before I opened it. So currently, I have my bridge here, right? And I'm wanting to model a car, but if I start creating objects, it's going to put them underneath the bridge, and that's going to be kind of awkward to try to get in there and look at them, right? So what I want to do is I want to put my bridge in a layer so I can hide it. Okay? I'm going to go to, I'm going to select all of this, just drag, select everything. So all of my bridge parts are selected, right? And then I'm going to go over here in my channel box, and at the bottom I should see display layers, right? So if I click on this, it should create a new layer. So that's that little plane there with the circle on it. Can you all see that in this bottom corner? Here. So that created a new layer. It's called layer 1. I can rename that if I wanted to. The way I rename it is I just double click on it. And so I will say you can't put spaces in your layers.
Can you say hyphens?
Huh?
Like hyphens?
I think you can do hyphens and underscores. Yes. I'll get. So some of you may not actually see layers down the side at the bottom of this, and if so, that may be because you have the attribute editor open instead of the channel box. Okay. So again, these tabs up here in the top. The one you're looking for is this first tab right here, this little blue one, right? That's going to open up your channel box. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. You may have this open, or you may have this open, or this, right? But if you click on this little box all the way here on the end, it'll take you to your channel box. And you'll see that as you open these, you also get this little tab down the side of your screen that'll allow you to click in between those as well. So I got channel box there, modeling toolkit, and I can just turn those on and off, right? So the channel box is going to be where we have our XYZ translates and rotates, and where we're going to have our layers, right? Any questions? So again, if you have questions, raise your hand. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to model a car. So let's try this. If you have some paper, okay? Not everybody has to do this, but if I would, a couple of you humor me. Let's try this. And everybody's welcome to try it. But just pull out a piece of paper, and without Googling this, without looking for any reference at all, I want you to draw, I'll give you a second to get it out. I want you to draw something that you should be able to already draw, right? How many of you think you know what a bicycle looks like?
No.
Right? So draw me one.
I don't like
Let's give you, I'll give you like 30, 45 seconds to draw a bicycle, okay?
Is our grid like on track?
If you click the little B button, you should see it. So, yeah, it is if we click the little circle with a plane on it. And remind me, and I'll mention that later. Because I should have went over those layers before. Okay. While you're drawing a bicycle, I'll go ahead and open up Photoshop, and we'll talk about why this is hard, right? Okay. How many of you were able to successfully draw a bicycle? One person.
What is success defined as?
Successfully. How many of you have drawn a bicycle that you might actually be able to ride without a break?
I don't think this is mechanically successful. I'm not an engineer.
It's like the torque is not correct in the middle support bar. Here's what most people do when I ask them to draw a bicycle. Okay, I like when we have a whiteboard in here because I can call you up to the board and embarrass you. I'm very nice that way. Yes. You have a bike? Yeah. So most of you probably saw one walking to class today, right? So you should be able to draw that, right? Right? So most people will draw a wheel, right? Like that's the front. And then they'll draw a rear wheel. And then this is where they stop and just look at it for a while. Like, what comes next, right? Well, I know we need a seat, right? We got to have somewhere to sit, right? So we draw us a seat, right? And then I know there's some handlebars and it's connected to this front wheel, so I'll go ahead and draw some handlebars here, right? And this is a clunky bicycle, but you get the idea. But this is where it gets challenging, because how do you connect all those things together?
It's a frame that you don't know how to draw.
Yeah, and we know that they're all connected together, and we probably have literally, most of us have seen one within the last 24 hours, right?
They're all so different.
See, but all bikes kind of have a similar support system, even if they are completely different. All bikes have a couple of things. I'm a guy, so I'll draw a boy's bike. But we know that this seat has to connect to something, has to connect to the frame, right? So it goes like this, right? And that's also where our pedals are. Draw some pedals there, right? And so here's the part that most people get wrong. Is from that, there's like a triangle that goes back to here, right? And then for a boy's bike, there's a triangle that goes up to here. So it's two triangles, right? So this is really rough, right? But this is kind of, yeah, actually I think that goes a little higher, right? So even though I teach this class, I still drew it incorrectly. It's probably more like this, right? And again, for a girl's bike, it's more like that, right? So how in the world will we ever model a bicycle if we can't even draw a bicycle with a stick figure?
The magic of Google.
The magic of Google. God bless you, Google. So, actually, I'm going to Google it over here because terrible things pop up when you type stuff into Google.
Don't you have safe searches?
Yeah,
Safe search is a pretty little lie.
isn't it?
Waiting to be disproven.
So all I had to do was type bike into Google's image search, and look, so many different bikes, and they all have these lovely triangles, right? And with or some variation of that, right? So I do this to show you that reference is necessary, right? Because most people, your gut instinct is like, I'm going to model a car. I know what cars look like. I drove here in one, right? And they just start modeling. And then about 2 hours into it, they're like, why doesn't my car look right? And it's because you didn't refer to reference. You didn't go back to reference. So we're going to model us a car, right? And we're going to model one that's pretty simple, kind of a boxy car. It's not going to be like photorealistic, like, Iron Man 3 car or something. Yeah.
I accidentally displayed 4 different screens on my Maya.
Thank you for bringing that up. I will get to that just in a second. So I'll show you how to fix it though. So car. So look at that. So much to choose from, and I can scroll forever. Right? What I'm looking for the most part, is I'm just looking for an image from the side. Right? I want to see roughly how wide that car is, but I'm looking for perspective. I'm sorry, for proportions. I'm looking for ideas, like do I want my car to have a sharper nose? Do I want it to be boxier? Do I want to model whatever one of these things are? What do I want my car to be, right? this is actually one of the more creative parts of this project, and people want to avoid it because they feel like they're stealing ideas, right? No, you're not stealing ideas. Like, ideas don't happen in a vacuum. You're using this to inform your creativity, right? So I'm probably going to go with something kind of simple just for instruction reasons. You're welcome to take this as elaborate as you want to, but I'm probably just going to use this car as my reference here. All right. So I'll go ahead and open that up so I can see it. Okay, so the question you had is what is that? I'm still broadcasting, aren't I? Okay, I'm making sure. Sometimes it kicks you off. Where did my So the issue you had is you now have 4 windows instead of 1, right? Probably what happened is you accidentally tapped the space bar. I really should have shown you this already. Let's just go ahead and tap the space bar. Mouse over your viewport. Just tap your space bar. So this is what you get. It's kind of overwhelming at first, but what we have is our perspective view up here in this corner, right? And then we have our side view, our front view, and our top view, right? And so I can move around in any of these and see this same object from different perspectives. Right. This is actually really handy when you're trying to move something just in a specific angle. Whenever you want to go back to your perspective view, you just mouse over this, tap your spacebar, right? And it'll full screen that again, or full frame it again. But this works with any of these. I can go to my front view, and I can see it full size as well. Okay. I want to show you one more thing, and this is a little confusing. If you tap your space bar but hold it down, you get that. Right? You get this whole list of words, right? This is another marking menu. And this marking menu is another way to do all of that stuff up there in that top window, right? Or that top menu. So you'll see we have File, Edit, Create, Select, Modify, all that stuff. Well, we have that in here as well, right? In fact, most of the stuff that we can do in Maya's viewport, we can do right here in this little menu. And the cool thing about it is that pops up wherever my mouse is, right? So it's a quick way of getting to stuff. So if you tap that and go to Display, and I can make changes here, Create, and I can create a new sphere, right? All of those things are good options. Also, if I click on this Maya, let's go ahead and full screen this. If I click on the word Maya, you'll see that I can change what viewport I'm looking through here. I could change this to my right view, and then I could go back to my perspective view, right? So here's the thing. I'll sort of pause here as a disclaimer, a caveat here. Right? There's like 5 different ways to do anything you want to do in Maya at a minimum, right? If I wanted to create a sphere, a polygon sphere, I can think of off the top of my head right now 5 different ways that I could do that, right? I could do that in the shelf. I could do that in the menu. I could do that in the marking menu. I could type a little piece of script down here that creates it. Like there's, I'm trying to think of the other one. Okay, 4. I thought of 4 off the top of my head. I could probably, give me half an hour, I could come up with another 7, right? Because there's so many different ways of doing things, right? And you don't have to do them all the same way. Everybody in this class is going to form different habits. You're going to form different practices. You're going to find, like, some of you are going to love that marking menu thing, right? Some of you are never going to use that at all, right? And that's okay. Everybody's going to find their own way of creating things, because in the end, your job is not to use a piece of software. Your job is to solve a problem, right? And so we're going to, I want to show you all these things. Some of these things may fall by the wayside. So the other thing is we just put our bridge in a layer, right? And so I like, that's one of the ways that I can hide this bridge, right? So I go over here, click that V, right? And now since it's in that layer, I can hide it, right? I can bring it back. I can also click this little box over here, and I can put it to sort of this wireframe mode. This is called templating. You'll notice now that I actually can't select the object. It's sort of like in a echo in there. And if I click it one more time, little T button, right? It goes to R. R stands for referencing, and that means I can see it. It looks just like all the others, but I can't select it. Right? All of those are beneficial things that you may want to do, right? In this mode here, later we're going to start animating our car, and you're going to keep accidentally selecting your bridge, and that's so annoying. Well, if you just set it to referencing mode, you won't be able to select your bridge anymore. You'll only be able to select the things that are not in that layer. Right? So I should have shown you that when we first created the layers. I got carried away. This is fun for me, so I get carried away easy. Yes?
I just pulled up a block randomly to try and like mess with, and I realized that it does not have a bunch of vertices. It just has the four.
Just has the four, right?
Is there a way to add?
Yes, there is. Actually, let's do that now. So what he's saying is he clicked this button right here to create a polygon box, right? So let's all do that. We're going to start our car with a box. So I'm going to click that, and we get a box, right? That box is way in there really small. How do I focus in on that?
F.
F. That's big, right? But unlike that sphere, this thing isn't covered in edges, right? It has some edges and faces, or otherwise we wouldn't have a model, right? But it only really has the ones that are on the perimeter. So if I right-click and I go to vertex, you'll see that I have these that are on the edge, right? And I can do that, but how do I make this into a car shape if that's all I have, right? So let me show you. Before I go any further with this, I'm going to go back to object mode. And I'm just going to delete that box. And instead of creating the box by clicking here, I'm going to go up here to create, polygon primitives, cube. And instead of clicking the cube button, I'm going to click on this little button out to the end. See that little box? Anytime you see one of those little boxes in something in Maya's menu, it means there's some options. Okay? So if I click that, it's going to open up this option, right? And this is going to allow me to, when I create that box, to create it in a different shape. I can also create it with additional divisions, right? So if I changed all this to, let's say, I want to change this to, let's do 5, 5, and 5, right? And hit create. Now I got way more edges in this. In fact, I may have too many, right? Because to me, I don't know if I need that many vertical edges, right? So, crap, I put too many in it. What do I have to do? Just, I guess, delete it and make another one, right? But what I just did is I created that box using a type of node, right? And even though we didn't manually do that, like when we create something, how Maya creates something is it creates a couple of different nodes and it wires them together, and this is all kind of happening in the background. And the result of all of those nodes wired together is this thing, right? So there's a creation node, and there's a shape node, and there's a material node, and all these different nodes to be able to see what the final output of this object is. Well, we can actually still go back and edit those nodes. So when I created it, over here in my channel box, you'll see that there's this inputs. You see that? And then underneath inputs, there's polycube 2. Or yours may say polycube 1, I don't know. So if you click that, you'll see that there's my subdivisions again. All right? So I don't want my height to be that high. I'm going to do more like 3 high. Okay? Okay, that's feeling a little bit better, right? Yeah, let's start with that. That's what I'm going to start scaling to get a better result for my car. Okay. So now I want to show you that I need to make those changes to this before I make some major changes to my box, because if I start moving vertices and then change those numbers of edges or numbers of divisions, the model will just like explode. It'll look crazy, right? So that's sort of the order of operations. You need to think ahead and say, I need to make a car, and I know that it's not as tall as it is long, so maybe I'll need more divisions in the length than I do in the height, right? So why don't I start with a box? No? No, that's a good one. I'm just picking at you. That's, yeah, sure. There's actually, I guess we can take it from that. There's a reason that everything comes in a box when it's first delivered, and that's because that's a very easy shape to pack things in, right? But if we did put it in a box, there'd be a lot of extra room. Like if I'm packing a ball, right? Like, and you put a ball in a box, that's a lot of wasted room in there, right? You could have wrapped it up in paper, and it takes up a little less room. This is very clear when you order something from Amazon that's like this big, and they ship it to you in this enormous, like mattress-sized box, right?
Trying to keep it safe.
Bubble wrap for.
We actually in this lab over here we just bought some Cintiqs, and the Cintiqs came in a box. It was like this big, right? It's pretty big. And when you open that box, there was another box that was almost the exact same size. It was like that much smaller, just so it would perfectly fit into that box. And we were like, why? Whatever. Anyway, I get off on tangents sometimes. My bad. And now you have a video of it, so it's exciting.
Well, now it's just a video of this screen for a very long time.
Yeah, you should have some. Well, there's a little. I'll show you the. This is going to be freaky just for a second. The video capture thing that you're going to get should also have like a little video of me up in the top corner up here. So that way, if I'm making important gestures, it's very rare that I make important gestures. Usually they're just big and like, that might be useful, right? Yes.
All right. So I just had a question about like the edge and vertice tools. It seems whenever you like pull on one side, it'll push in the other side, or pull at the other side.
That might be how you're selecting them.
Is there a different way to select?
So are you selecting it by selecting it?
I was.
Like you go to vertex and you drag select these, and then you move them, and you'll see that it's also moving those that are on the other side of the box, right?
Okay.
And that's because of how I drag selected them. So yeah, you just have to be careful when you're selecting vertices. That's why I show you the Q tool, because sometimes the move tool gets in your way. You can hit Q and just start randomly selecting stuff, right? So I'm just holding Shift to select additional things. So you stretching or have a...
I'm not sure the soft selection, because a couple of people have had it automatically turned on.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought that might be.
Maybe. Yes. Once I start editing stuff, remind me if I forget. So the first thing is, well, no. Let me go back. I kind of got off track. So I start with a box because that is the thing that I think I'm going to have to manipulate the least before it starts looking like a car, right? Because I could start with a sphere and edit every individual point until it's eventually car-shaped, right? But a box is already kind of a sphere, right? Or I'm sorry, it's kind of a car is already kind of a box shape, right? It's kind of boxy. It may be rounded in the corners, but overall it's kind of a boxy shape, right? If I were going to model one of these monitors, I would probably start with a box, right? But if I were going to model someone's head, right, what shape would I start with? Probably something more round, like a sphere, right? If I were going to model a drinking glass, what shape would I start with?
Cylinder.
Maybe a cylinder, because it's already kind of cylindrical shaped, right? And we're actually going to get to that a little bit later. We'll talk about that some more. And so we kind of have to first start and like with a little bit of planning in our head. Where am I going to go with this, right? And so I know that this is eventually going to be a car. My car is kind of boxy shaped with a little bit of rounded edges. So I'm going to start with a box, okay? And then I'm just going to start using my reference video or reference image, right? It's right here, right? I'm going to pull this off to my other side to start getting a similar shape of the car, right? Actually, I'll show you. Interestingly, this is cool about Google. It has some other cars that are similar down here, right? So I can also look at some of these others to get some ideas. I think this is the one I was on, right? So I'm going to pull this over here as my reference, and I'm just going to start scaling this object. Look at my bridge as an example. There we go. I'm going to start scaling this object to get it car-shaped, right? So it's a little bit shorter, a little bit longer. Right? How wide is it? So I think it probably needs to be a touch wider as well, right? Okay. So, I actually think mine needs to be a little taller. So maybe something like that. Now, what I've built here is the trunk and the hood, right? I haven't done anything with the roof of the car yet. Okay, and so we can start doing that at any point we want, right? But you'll realize that there's only so much I can get out of this, right? I can go through here and I can select all of these faces, right? And then I can move those faces, but I'm kind of losing some definition there. I mean, I'm getting the windshield and stuff like that, but like really what I want is I actually want some more mesh, right? I want to like grow it out of the top of that. Anybody ever at 4th of July, they sell those little bitty, they call them snakes, like those little bitty things, like a little pellet, a little cylindrical pellet, and you like light the top of it, and it starts to like extrude this like long undulating snake of stuff. And it's a little bitty pellet, but we grew all of that extra stuff out of it, right? So that's what I want to use, is something like that to be able to grow some more mesh up out of our car, right? Yes.
My manipulation tools are showing up really small and hard to work with.
Okay. So there's actually if your arrow is really small or really big, that's actually just the plus or minus keys. So if I hit the plus key, you'll see my arrow gets bigger. Hit the minus key, sometimes it'll get too small, and you're like, I can't use that. Right? So just keep hitting plus until it gets bigger. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start extruding some mesh up out of this, right? But before I do that, maybe I'm going to push some of these edges around and get it kind of car shaped. Right? So I'm going to go to edge, double click this edge, and that allows me to select the entire thing. And I can kind of start pushing these around a little bit to get a little bit more of the shape of the car that I need. Right? So something that I like to do is start rounding stuff. So I can sort of pull that down, right? To start rounding those edges. Yes?
What did you do after you went with the edge?
Oh, I just double clicked on an edge. So that allowed me to select the entire thing, right? So we can hold shift and double click again, and I can select multiple edges, right? So like what I did is I just double clicked, that selected that entire ring, and I can do whatever I need to with that, right? Including sort of sliding it just in one axis to get it closer to the end of my car, right? So I'm really trying to find where the roof and the hood and all of that should be. I'm just sort of spacing this stuff out, right? Sliding them around. Right? Now, to start rounding my edges, I want to show you some sort of creative ways of manipulating this. I can double click on that edge there. I'm going to hold shift and double click on this edge, right? And I can start moving those together, right? I'm just going to move them just in the Z or Y axis to move them down, right? And you're going to see I'm starting to round that, right? But what if I just wanted to move them both inward too, like sort of push them closer together? How would I do that? Because if I move them in X, it's going to move them both in the same direction. That's not what I want, right? Is there a way that I could do that? Okay.
Whenever I double click this edge, it just like pulls my things out. Like, how did you get that set up with
Oh, yes. Oh, okay.
I just made a coffee.
So it's the edge you're selecting. So double click. That makes sense. Okay. So let's say I wanted to push those two edges closer together. How would I do that? You actually already know the tool to do this. Just a creative way of using it. Any ideas? All right, let's try this. Go to your scale tool. So hit R, right? And you'll see that if I scale in this red direction, this X direction, those 2 points are going to get closer or further away, right? So I can start to round this stuff in, right? I can do the same with, if I double click this edge, it's going to select that entire thing around there. And I can start making that whole thing a little rounder, all right?
Okay, I like this a lot.
Okay. So let's just keep manipulating our car and like getting other ideas. So obviously the front of my car right now is very flat. Right? I want to round that a little bit more. I want this to kind of nudge out. Maybe the same with my trunk. So I'm going to select all of these edges. I'm holding shift and double clicking those edges, right? And then I can just scale them forward and back a little bit to get them a little rounded, right? And maybe I'll just get those two center ones. Get something like that, right? Now, so far we've been using just the move tools and move and scale tools, right? We can rotate stuff if we wanted to, if we wanted to select faces. Right now I've also just been selecting edges, right? But I want to show you that if I just select a single vertex, like you know that I can, sorry, that was loud and obnoxious. I can right click and just select a single vertex, right? And I can move it too, but that's not really getting me anything I want, right? I can also drag select whole sections of vertices, right? So I can drag select something like that and get the entire front end of this car, right? And once I have that, I can scale that down, or I can scale it in a single axis, and that's going to exaggerate that curve that's already in there, right? So there's a lot of different things we can do to start changing the shape of this car. Now, something that some people may have accidentally done is tapping the B key. Anybody tap the B key by accident? So let's do this. I'm going to grab one vertex. I'm going to make it a very strategic vertex. I'm going to grab this one back here, okay, in the center of the back of my car, or the back of my car's trunk, right? And I'm going to tap the B key. Watch what happens. So you'll notice that the entire car kind of gets this gradation of color on it, right? We got yellow up to red. And if I grab that and move that now, and I just have one vertex selected, watch what happens.
Okay. I don't like that.
So this is called soft select, okay? So that's the B key, right? And if I tap the B key again, it goes away, and life feels a little bit more sensical, right? Let's tap the B key one more time, and I want to show you how this can be useful. Is right now, soft select means I'm moving one vertex, but it's going to edit all of the vertices around it to sort of make it feel more cohesive, so I don't get that weird, like, or it's not just getting that one spike that sticks up, right? If I use the B key, I can sort of nudge all of that area up, right? But if I hold down B and sort of click and drag toward the center, you'll see that I'll be able to reduce the size of the area that's affected, right? So I could reduce it down to something like that, and now when I grab that and move it, I can get a little bit more interesting manipulation out of this, right? Now, sometimes that happens and people are like, what's wrong? My model isn't moving right. I'm freaking out. If you see that color gradation, that yellow to red or blue or whatever, that's usually what that is. Just tap the B key again. I want to show you another key that sometimes people accidentally hit. I actually saw it the other day in the bridge project. Because your W, E, and R buttons, Q, W, E, R, are all close to your number buttons, sometimes this happens. So I have my object selected, and sometimes I tap 1, and it doesn't look like anything happened, and because right now it didn't, right? But then sometimes I accidentally tap 2, and then that happens. Or even 3. And so what you'll see is that my car actually looks softer now, right? It's like it rounded it. So this is smooth preview. So 1, 2, 3. Okay? So let's say I don't want it to be rounded anymore. I was almost done with my car. I can hit 1 again, and it'll go back to that, right? A lot of times when we're modeling things, we want stuff to have little soft edges on it. Even your monitor, like if you look at your monitor, it feels like it's just a box, right? but you'll notice that there's little rounded bevels on the corner and stuff like that, right? And it's because things in the real world aren't always that sharp, right? They're not always got those sharp of edges. So this will still continue to work. If you want your car to be a little rounder, just go ahead and hit 3, right? And we can start sort of manipulating this to be a little bit of a, more bubbly car, right? So the next thing I wanted to show you was how to make that additional mesh come out of there, because I have a very limited number of faces here, and let's imagine you were modeling a human being, right? And I started with their torso, right? And maybe I used a cylinder to get that torso shape. And I'm like, yeah, but now they need some arms, right? Like, it doesn't matter how many edges I have inserted on that cylinder, there's just not going to be enough mesh there for me to pull an arm and a bunch of fingers out of that cylinder, right? Because we already have like a limited number of vertices here, a limited number of faces. So what we need to be able to do is create more faces that come up out of the top of this to get the roof of our car. So I'm going to go back to 1, and I'm going to go grab these faces here. So the face, I'm just going to grab these to the center, right? And this is what I started to do earlier, but I decided to sort of hold off a little bit. So if I go to, Edit Mesh on our menu. Now, some of you may be like, I don't see Edit Mesh in my menu. If you don't see Edit Mesh, it's because you may be in a different menu set. Currently, we're in the modeling menu set. If yours is an animation, you'll see Edit Mesh isn't there anymore, right? So we need to right-click, or we need to click here and make sure that we're in modeling. And so with those faces selected, I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. Okay. What you'll see is I get a different looking tool, okay? And it seems like nothing else changed except for that tool, but it actually did, right? And the way we can tell that is if I started moving this, right? See that I get more mesh that's growing up out of the top of it. Now, everybody kind of look up here just for a second. Look at me. Look away from your screen. Look at me. Because over the next couple of days, the biggest question I'll get asked is, why does my model look that way? And the reason is because you hit extrude, but you never moved anything, right? So I can move this out of here, right? And now my model looks like a new model, right? It looks like that has extra mesh. But if I don't move that out of there, it still extruded it. It just left it in the same spot, right? So now if I smooth this, you'll see that the mesh looks different in the center. Do you see that? Like, we got that different edge flow around there, right? So those vertices were created, those extra faces were created whether I move them up or not, okay? So I'm just going to hit the W key and go ahead and move those up. Right, and I'm starting to get a little bit more of the car shape I want, right? Now again, I'm going to still continue to slice this up and move this around and change it, right? Scale this inward. Yes.
I'm lost.
Okay. Where was it?
Wherever you went there.
Oh, okay. So looks like you extrude it. W and pull up on the translate Y. Is that what you were going for? No. What were you? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So I just selected some edges and scaled them. You currently have all those faces selected. Now, it looks like you also have an additional man extruded device. So you have an additional edge in there. the thing I was talking about. It's all right. It's not too big. The only difference between the smooth it, it's got to use more grease. So you can undo it a few times if you want to. Just, let me go back and do the extrude thing one more time.
Okay.
Okay. Remember, you can undo multiple times. So Control Z until we get back to just a box. So if I hit 3 right now, I'll see that it's not been extruded before, right? So edit mesh, extrude, so subdivides it, right? And then move that out. Now, how I reshape this roof is like there's dozens of different ways I can do that. I can hit R to scale it, and I can sort of scale all that together and scale it this way. I can also go through here and reselect these faces and do that. And rescale it. I could go in here and select all of these vertices and readjust this, right? Or I could go in here and select all of these edges, scale that, move that. All of these things are going to result in, like, these are just ways you can manipulate your car's shape. Okay? So, that's actually all I'm going to go over on modeling this car. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a few minutes here and do it on time. This class is out at 10:15, all right? Okay. So I'm going to give you a few minutes here to go ahead and tinker with your car, right? I don't think we're going to get through the stuff I wanted to get through today. All right, that's all right. Yes.
I'm selecting one part, one face view, and then it's selecting something from the other side of the box.
Okay, I think that's.
I'll do that.
Okay. So you recognize that stuff there within that selection still. So if you just hold, you just click instead of dragging, and now hold Shift and select the next one. Like that's the. Okay. So we have 30 minutes. Let's see what we can get through. So feel free to keep working on your car, okay? But we're going to go ahead and start setting this up for animation, okay? So after we have a model, okay, we need to be able to move it around, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and create some wheels for this thing, and I'm just, what shape would I use for that? Anybody? So like a sphere? Maybe think a sphere. Is anybody awake? Yeah. All right. So let's get some answers there. What shape is a tire?
Cylinder.
Cylinder, right? So let's start with a cylinder. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a cylinder, and that's all in the wrong spot, right? So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. Now I need to rotate it exactly. So I'm just going to type in 90 into my z-axis there. And then I'm going to scale it. All right. And I'm just making kind of a quick car here, so I'm just going to use one cylinder to go all the way through. Okay? I know that's not accurate, but for right now, for what we're going through, this will work. Okay, Control D. So when I hit Control D, what's that do? Anybody? It duplicates our wheel, right? So after I get one in place, I can hit Control D, and now I have two. Okay? Okay. Let's walk around. I'm just going to walk around and see where everybody's at. don't worry about the green color right now. That's, I think it's because you started with a new scene. The green is just a material that we can add to it. Okay, so just walking around, this is where you should be, okay? Because the next exercise, like the next thing that we're going to work on having for Monday, okay, is getting your car modeled and getting it animated driving across the bridge, okay? So, if you're still worried about how your car model looks, that's okay. You shouldn't be able to get all of this done in class anyway. You're going to have to work a little bit on this on Friday and stuff like that. But what I want you to do is, like, just kind of watch for a minute. If you're able to sort of follow along, that's cool, and keep up. But otherwise, we're just going to try to get to that point to where we can animate something, okay? So if you're not finished with your car, instead of animating your car, you can just animate a box, or you can animate a sphere or something like that to learn how animation works, right? But right now, if I wanted to animate my car driving, let's say I'm done with my model, right? And I wanted to animate, well, wait, before I go into that. Right now, my car is green. Right? How many of you like that green color?
Oh, totally.
So we need different materials on this thing, right? A material is an attribute of the model, okay? I'm sorry, that's wrong. A material is an attribute that stands by itself that is connected to the model, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create some new materials for the car and some new materials for the tires, okay? Just so we can see those separately, right? So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select these two wheels. Actually, let's select the car first. And I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to say Assign New Material. Okay? Now when I do that, this is going to pop up. Lots of stuff on here, right? The material I'm going to choose is a blend. Let's try B-L-I-N-N. And if I click that, you'll see my car goes gray. You'll also see that if I smooth my car, it's kind of shiny too, right? So unlike that previous material we had, now we have some gloss on this. Okay? So there's multiple types of materials we can use. We can use a blend. We can use a Lambert. They're like that entire list. All of those were different materials that we can use. Okay. Now, if I select my car and go out here in my attribute editor, so I was in my channel box, right? I'm going to click over here to my attribute editor, the third one over, and I click all the way out here to the end. You'll see that blend material that we just added. See that? Now, on this blend material, we can change a lot of different things. I can change the color. I can change how glossy it is. I'm currently going to make my car kind of red. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and change the material on these two wheels as well. Right click. Assign new material. In this case, I don't need them to be shiny. So I'll go ahead and do a Lambert. Let me see, where is Lambert at? I have to look at it from where. There it is. So Lambert material is just going to be gray. Right? And again, if I select that object, you'll see that there's my Lambert 3. Again, we have to be in our attribute editor, not our channel box, right? And so Lambert 3, I'm going to crank that up and make that a little darker so I can use those as sort of like wheels, right? So, over the next little while here, you can continue to work on your car, get it to look better than this. But this is the way we can change those materials from that ugly green color, right? And in fact, that ugly green color was actually just something I had put on there before I gave you this file. Usually when you create a new object in Maya, it's going to come in as gray. So if you've been worried that yours is gray instead of green, don't worry. But it's time to move this thing around, right? We're going to animate this. And if I were to grab my car, right, I can move the car as if it were a car, right? But let's say if we tried to rotate it, we're going to get that.
That's the best car I've ever seen.
Yeah. So the problem with this is we want the car to stay together, right? We want the car to all be one piece, or at least like controlled by one piece. Right? So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of group this together, right? So I want to show you a new tool, a new menu, or a new, what is this? Like a new view inside of Maya. Okay. So if you go over to this side of your screen, to your left side of your screen, right? All the way at the bottom of all of these buttons, you'll see this little thing here. Do you see that? Right here. That's our outliner. Okay, so if we click on that, it's going to open it on mine on the other screen. Okay. I get this. Some of yours, it may have like wedged it in right there. Right? If you want to mount yours there, you can just sort of drag it and mount it in there. Right? And you'll see that I have all of these things in here, right? These are all of the objects that are in our Maya scene. You'll see we have our cameras, we have our individual pieces in here, right? And all the way down here at the bottom, we have these three pieces, which are our car. Does this class get out at 10:05 or 10:15? 10:15? That's what I thought. Yes, because today's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, we can get this done. We got this. It seems like we're a long ways away, but we got this. Don't worry. So so this allows us to grab anything we want to in here individually, right? And now I can move that around. Okay. So currently, all of my stuff is named poorly. Like I was making this kind of quick. But I want to be able to see what stuff is more clearly, right? So I'm going to rename them inside of the outliner. There's a whole bunch of different ways we can rename something. If I grab the body of my car, you'll see I could type in the name right here. Right? I type it in as car body, right? I wrote cart body for some reason. Oh, that didn't work. Sorry, I had the wrong thing selected. Got to do it over here in the channel box. PQ59, car body. And so now you'll see over here, it says car body, right? I can also double click on it in my channel or outliner, right? And I can name this like front tires, right? Rear tires. I apparently cannot type today. There we go. So now we can see those in here and know what they are, right? And if I'd have been neater when I was creating the bridge, I would have renamed all those pieces too. Naming is very important. That was sloppy on my part, but this will really help you stay organized because now not everything is named P cube whatever, right? Now the reason that happens when I grab all of these pieces and rotate them, right, I grab all of this, try to rotate it. The reason all of that happens is that each of those objects have their own origin point, their own pivot point, right? So my car has a pivot point that's right in the center of the car. You see where the arrow is? Like it goes right to the center of the car. If I grab these wheels, they're back there, right? And so if I try to rotate from that pivot point, the wheels are going to rotate like that, but the car is going to rotate from a different point, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to make the car body, control the wheels, okay? So everywhere the car body goes, the wheels will go. Now this sounds like it's going to take some way of connecting this, but you already know this system, okay? And that's the thing that makes the outliner nice, is that if you came in today and you used Windows, right? And Windows works off of this same system. So think of this more like a folder structure, okay? So let's say you have a folder on your computer full of photographs you took, right? So you took a bunch of pictures while you were at, let's say you went on 3 vacations this summer, right? You went on a vacation to Myrtle Beach, and you went on a vacation to Niagara Falls, and you went on a vacation to Gatlinburg, right? And each of those times you went, you took a bunch of pictures, and when you came back, you put them in a folder on your computer, and you named like one folder Gatlinburg, and one folder Niagara Falls, one folder whatever that other one was, Myrtle Beach, right? So you have these 3 folders that all have pictures in them, right? But let's say you just wanted to organize this even better and you wanted to put all of those folders into pictures of your summer vacation of 2017, right? So you would make another folder and you'd put all of those pictures in summer vacation 2017. Right? Now, if I were to drag that Niagara Falls folder to a jump drive to take it with me, right, to somewhere, I just got those files that were in the Niagara Falls folder, right? I didn't get the ones that were in Gatlinburg or any of those others. If I drag the summer vacation folder, though, I get everything that is underneath it, right? So we know how a folder structure works, right? Do you have a question or just stretching? Okay. So that's what we're going to do here, right? If I want these two tires to go with it, I'm just going to put them underneath car body, right? So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to click front tire. You have to hold Control to select an additional object inside of the outliner. So Control to hold that. And then I'm going to use my middle mouse button, that middle wheel. I'm going to click on it until it selects it. And I'm just going to drag those on top of car body. And so now what you'll see is car body has a little plus sign in front of it. And underneath it, it has front tire and rear tires. Okay? So that means if I were to animate the car, right, move the car, and all I'm selecting is just the car body. The car is going with, or the tires are going with it. And if I rotate those, the wheels go with it too. Okay? So now all I have to do is just animate the car. Right? I don't have to animate those wheels separately. So the way I think of this is I just kind of put those wheels inside of the container of the car. Right? The container is like, it's moving it around. Okay. Here's what I would advise you to do is once you get to this point, save your file. In fact, save often. Just always save a new version just because it's, file or hard drive space is cheap. So I'm going to go File, Increment, and Save. Okay. And you'll see that what that does is right now I have Bridge Constructed 05. If I go File, Increment, and Save, it's going to put a .001 on there, right? And that's going to allow me to save a new version of it over and over again. That way I don't lose anything. Yes?
I can drag a little scroll.
Middle clicking? Oh, you have that window here. So we got to do the mouse. Mouse. Settings. To drag those in there? To put those underneath the car? Oh, to save, I just saved it, but I don't like saving over the same file because we're getting ready to do some stuff that's going to mess things up, right? And if you make a mistake, you don't want to have to go all the way back to the beginning of modeling your car. So I was just saving this as a new version of the file, right? You can do that as by going File, Save Scene As, and you can manually rename it so you have a new file name, right? But all I did was I did this increment and save, file, increment and save. And what that's going to do is that's just going to put a number at the end of your file and save it as a new file, right? So it's going to save it as bridge constructed 5.0001. If I do increment and save, it'll do bridge constructed 5.002. .003. It's going to do that over and over again until we have thousands and thousands of files, and that's okay because that's better than having one file that went corrupted, right? Okay. So, I know that not everybody's car is finished. That's okay. The exercise for today is we're going to get get 3 cars animated across the bridge. So what I want you to do is just sort of pause working on your car because this always is difficult for people to process when it comes to animation. So if you want to try this out, you can just make a box to animate. You can make a sphere to animate, whatever, right? We're just going to practice doing some animation. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and turn my bridge back on. Right? I'm going to go ahead and use my car, but no, let's go ahead and just use the sphere so we can see how to do that with the sphere. So let's create a sphere. I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to make it a different color so you can see it better. Right click, assign new material. I'm just making mine sort of a red blend just so you can see that ball a little bit better, right? And then I'm going to go back to my channel box. So, currently my ball is all the way over here on the end of this bridge, right? All the way over here. And so we know because the Cartesian coordinate system that has a series of numbers associated with it, right? Right? So can we look at this and see where our ball is located? Yes?
My tools aren't showing up on the car, they're showing up on the box.
What you've done is file change. Oh. You may have done is if I were to on the vertices and move it, like it still started moving the object, but I'm not just moving all the vertices. So it's change it to
Where did it go? I haven't touched it since we started the exercise.
manually manipulate that? Okay, so if you're still modeling your car, stop, because this part's going to be hard, and you're going to ask me lots of questions, and then class is going to be over, and I can't answer them. So stop modeling your car, animate a ball. Okay, we're going to create a sphere. I put my sphere all the way at the end of the bridge. It doesn't matter where you put yours. We're just going to learn how to make things move. Okay, so we recognize that right now my object is at translate x 0, translate y 4.1, whatever, translate z 21 or 27.856, right? So we recognize that that's the location of that ball, okay? And that's the location of that ball on frame 1, right? Or whatever frame I'm on. Right now I'm 174, but if I drag my timeline down here, right, this is going to work just like any other type of timeline, right? YouTube, whatever it is you're watching, that's just how timelines work, right? You'll see them everywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag all the way to frame 1, okay? And with my ball selected, I'm going to hit the S key. So I'm going to go ahead and select my ball, and I'm going to hit S, okay? S for set keyframe. Now when I do that, watch what happens on my timeline down here, and watch what happens in my channel box. So if I hit S, the thing that happened on my timeline is I got a little red tick mark, right? The thing that happened in my channel box is that all of my channels turned red. See that? Okay. What I just did is I put a marker in space. I'm sorry. I put a marker on that ball that said anytime we are on frame 1, my ball's location should be all of those numbers. Like translates, rotates, and scales. All of them should be set to that whenever we're on frame 1. Okay? So let's just go out to, say, frame 70, okay, or something, wherever you want to take it to. Just take it a little further down, right? And I'm going to move my ball maybe to the other side of the screen, right? And so the only thing I really changed is I changed my translate Z. The translate X and Y is all the same, right? But you'll see that there's no tick mark here, right? And there's no, there's no, like, this is pink now, not red. Right? So pink means it's animated, but we're not currently on a keyframe. So if I were to move my timeline again, if I were to click here and move, you'll see it just snaps back to the beginning. Okay. What I need is another keyframe. I'm going to move this out to the end, and I'm going to say whenever you're on frame 70, I want you to be this new number, right? So the thing you'll notice now is now my translate Z is negative 26 instead of positive 27 or whatever it was, right? So if I hit S, I've set another keyframe, right? And now between frames 1 and 70, my ball animates across the screen. Okay? I wanted to get to this today because this is what the animation concentration is about. We needed things to animate, so we made some of them, right? We made a car. We're gonna make even more cars, all that stuff. But what the animation concentration is about is making things move, right? Because now I can hit the play button and I can watch my ball come to life. Okay? Now, scary thing is it's going to come to life way too fast. Well, maybe not. Right? That's an awfully fast ball traveling across the screen. In fact, it's traveling too fast across the screen. What our scene is currently doing is it's playing every frame of our timeline as fast as it can. Okay? Animation actually really happens at a certain frame rate, right? What is the frame rate for an animated film? We talked about this before. Yes.
27 to 30 frames per second.
Depends on the situation, right? So if we're watching a TV show or watching something on YouTube, it's probably 30 frames a second, right? 29.97, right? Yeah, some video games get up to 60, maybe even higher than that, 120. Film is 24, and Maya by default is set to 24. And you'll see that this is playing way more than 24 frames in 1 second, right? It's just flying across through there. To play it in real time, what we have to do, and this is a question I'll get a lot, right click, playback speed, real time. So you just right click on your timeline, playback speed, and we set that to real time. You'll see now that's what our ball looks like, driving across this bridge.
How do we play the animation again?
These little play buttons down here in the bottom corner. Mine's currently playing, but you can hit the stop button there.
How do we get rid of the extra frames?
So if you create a frame and you don't need it, we're going to go in here. I'll stop my playback. Go in here and get your mouse over top of that frame, right click, and then delete, right? We can also shift frames like that. I'll show you this kind of quickly, but we'll be getting into this more over the next few days. So if we hold down Shift and drag, we can highlight a range. And so that means I can also sort of shift these around. Okay. So I know we're getting kind of close to the end of class. Okay. What I would like you to do is before Monday, let's get 3 cars in this scene driving across that bridge. Okay? It can be the same car 3 times. You are welcome to do that, right? You can model 3 different cars. If modeling is part of what you like, that's cool. But what you're going to turn in, and I will show you how to do this at the beginning of Monday's class, is you're going to turn in a play blast. Like, what does that word even mean? It's an animation preview. It's a video. So we will get a video out of this. Show you kind of quickly how to do that. So if I right click on my timeline, it's that play blast button there, right? And so that will make us a little animated preview video. That's what we're going to turn in at the beginning of Monday's class. If you're here on Friday, I can show you how to make that. And it's pass or fail too. If you have 3 cars that are all animated driving somehow in this video, you pass, right? That's exercise 2. Okay? And I'll post this on band. Okay? Exercise 2, due Monday, 3 cars driving across the bridge. What we're building to is project 1, okay? Because eventually what you're going to have is an entire scene. We're going to create more models for the environments. We're going to create whatever you want. You make this the world you want it to be. You make the cars how you want them to be. We're going to light this and we're going to render it. And the final version of that will be project 1. So what's exercise 2?
Get 3 cars animated across the bridge.
Yeah, 3 cars animated across the bridge as a play last, right? Well, and I'll show you how to play last later. What's project 1 going to be?
The cars driving, but the entire scene.
An entire scene, lit, rendered, materials. We'll even go over some texturing. So we'll cover that over the next few weeks. What's due Monday is the play blast, okay? And so starting Monday, I'll show you some more tools, including that sculpt tool you mentioned earlier. We'll talk about that a little bit. I'll show you how to do some more texturing, and I'll show you how to do lighting and rendering, and we'll also get a camera in there, okay? But for right now on Monday, you just need to come in with a Maya file that has 3 cars animated across the bridge, okay? So, sorry I kept you almost to the last minute here. You're free to go. Yes,
My bridge disappeared, by the way.
your bridge disappeared?
My spear destroyed my bridge. It's in pieces.
My bridge has been gone.
All right. That's why we saved before we did this. Yeah, let
How
me
long it's been gone, but I tried to bring it back and it's just missing.
let me see if I can help you find it. Okay, cool. So you all are free to go now. If you have any questions, feel free to hang around. I know we have another class coming in here in a second. So
I do like my